Oh, there's a recording now. Okay. I'll talk the title slide slowly so latecomers can find the room.
You need your time, man.
I'm Idorol from University of British Columbia. We put our courses up on edX, and I'm going to talk about questions, not answers, boosting learner participation in MOOC forums. So how can we get students and learners to talk to each other in the right place? So this is all data that Stanford put up. They looked at the range, proportion of students who participate in the forums. And as you see, the proportion of students is fairly low. Almost each column is a different class. And you see that most of the classes are about 4% of the students ever do anything in the forum. Most of them post only one post. Usually it's an introductory post like, hey, I'm John. I'm glad to meet everyone. I'm looking forward. So that's the red. So the blue, we see below 2% of the students actually engage in the forums. That's Stanford data. I think it's about 2 years old. It's very similar to our data. I'll have some detailed data coming up soon. That's just one example. One of our MOOCs, the climate science, about climate change. I'm going to talk about this MOOC more. We asked students when they left the course. So these are students who not only persisted and finished the course, they also had the energy to fill the exit survey. And we asked them what interaction you had with your peers, and essentially the same, not much. Right, so again, no surprises here. What we have is a problem that's common to most people who work in this world. How can we improve interactions between learners in a MOOC? And usually I call it, how can we see MOOC the X-MOOC? Okay, you can see how old people here, but whether they got the reference. So we have a challenge, and when we have a challenge, we kind of go through the usual research cycle of let's find a solution approach, implement it, get results, and usually the results we introduce a new challenge. And you also remember these two really nice fields called learning sciences and data sciences that often they do not speak to each other, which is kind of a shame. I've heard too many computer scientists tell me, why do we need theory? We have data. And I had too many theory people say that the data is just misleading. So it's we said, let's see if these two can talk to each other. We'll go to the learning sciences to figure out the approach and the data sciences to evaluate it. And we designed the following approach for our discussion forums. Again, not rocket science, it all makes sense. I guess it's when we bothered putting the efforts. One thing is align discussion with learning outcomes. That was one of our goals. Discussions are not just there to ask about the submission deadline. Discussions should be aligned with the learning outcomes. And similarly, they should be integrated into the course, right? The conversing, interacting, communicating is part of the course. We want the discussions to be part of the course. We want to promote discussions among learners. I just talked with Mike on the break. It's amazing how MOOCs were able to bring people from all over the world just to keep all of them quiet and listen to one person. Right, that's such a waste of diversity and perspectives. So that's invite diversity and promote discussion. Expertise, right? We know that many MOOC takers are experts, right? We look at the demographics, they have advanced degrees, they have great careers. Let them talk. So how do we practically implement it? The first thing we told the TAs in the course, the TAs were doing most of the replies, is ask, don't answer. I think I use slightly less polite language. Asking them not to interrupt learners when learners converse. These conversations are important. What we would get is students would ask a great question and the TA would go and say, that's the answer. End of discussion. Instead we say, well, first, and the TAs were proud of being on task and replying within minutes. So we told them first, actually, hold back, wait, let other experts participate. And then when you join, yes, put your opinions, summarize what happened before you, and then ask at the end, what else? Can you elaborate? What do you think? So ask, not answer. Right, so the TA here gives, this is an interesting example, give discussion, give a summary, opinion, and they say at the end, according to you, what is the best way to deal with such issue? Right, that's what the TA wrote. Then we seeded the discussion, the modules with topical threads. So most edX courses use the discussion board in a separate location. It's not even part of the course visually. We seeded each unit, so what you see on the left is a units map with two discussions at the bottom, with thoughtful questions, sometimes pointing to additional resources, and seeding to discussion, the students discuss. So the threads, this is discussion on the topic. Each module has questions on the topic, which was not obvious to the instructor. Second thing, they're not somewhere far away, they're part of the course. There was no participation or any marking associated because edX did not support that, which was a challenge, right? Getting students engaged without getting marks. The last thing we did was encourage diversity. Invite observational, personal, contextual responses. In the topics such as climate change, that's kind of obvious, right? Let's hear from people around the world, impact of climate. And we added a thread around personal observations, and in general, the language was very inviting for opinions and examples. So what was the context for this work? The climate course, I mentioned it, about climate change, the science. It's a really good course. It's going to launch again, I think, in November, if you want to take it. Sarah Harris, the instructor, really fantastic instructor. So it's a very active learning course, a lot of peer feedback and essays and math assignments. It's much more than just multiple choice. Actually, multiple choice is a small part of this course. And we had 3 instances of the course. So the first was December 2015 with a very disappointing forum participation, and then 2 more runs this year, which you see, and the color coding will stay roughly the same throughout. So we talked to Sarah and her TAs along the blue line, okay, between the first run and the second 2 runs. So what I'm going to show you is to demonstrate what happened before the change and after the change. Notably, the pink run was much smaller. We have roughly half the number of students participate, though demographics are very similar. These are the age of the students, the gender, education level. See very similar demographics among the 3 runs. Furthermore, we asked them, what are your top reasons for taking this course? These are the top 5 reasons: practical knowledge, understanding, interesting, pursue further education. Again, we see very similar demographics along the 3 runs. And we asked them, this is really interesting. I didn't show the detailed slide. We asked them at the beginning of the course, which of the following course components do you think you'll use? Videos, problems, peer assessments. And forums are by far the least favorite things they say they'll use. So blue means blue means I'm going to use it always or often. Yellow means I'm never going to use it. So again, all the 3 runs are the same, and all of them pretty much think really poorly about the discussion forums. So this is kind of me trying to convince you that it's legit to compare rounds 1, 2, and 3. Did we convince the instructor to do what we wanted to do, some sanity check or manipulation check? These are the number of posts that the instructor had in the forum. See, the instructor did 80 posts. Then we talked to her about the instructor and about the forums, and she nearly doubled the number of posts she did, which was not the intent. She did not realize she did that when I showed her this data. She said, well, clearly I had too much available time. Luckily, she went back to not posting much in the 3rd run of the course. So this is seemingly a confound. In a minute, I'll say why or why not for the middle course. It's actually an opportunity for us to see, is it just instructor being more on the forum that maybe encourages participation? There's some work, if I recall correctly, from Illinois that showed that instructor being in the forum brings students to the forum. So that's kind of an undesigned opportunity to evaluate that. Though if you look at the overall posts, that's not the case. These are TA posts. This lady? Oh, don't do this. Okay, I'll give up there. Oh, here. Stay. So the top is community TA, this is TAs. What you see, the TAs that posted a lot, as I said the first time, posted almost nothing in the next 2 times. So overall, in terms of instructional staff, how involved the instructional team is, we see a slight decline. So the instructional team was not more active, only the instructor was more active here. The other thing that's important to note here, we analyzed all the threads. We coded for 3 kinds of threads. Topical, on-course topic, social, which is, hey, I'm John, and procedural, which is, oh, I submitted the assignment 3 minutes late, I need my credit. So if you look only at the topic, which is what we care about, this is where learning happens, we see that again, we have about the same number from the instructional team first and second run, and the third and the first run have exactly the same number of posts by the instructor, 16 posts on topic. We didn't talk with the instructor between here and here. She got no guidance here. So, and also we looked at percentage, what we defined visibility. What percentage of all the posts were posted by the instructional team? And again, it's fair to compare. In both cases, it's exactly 4%. You can already get a hint. If a much smaller classroom is the same number, the same percentage, means you have more posts. I'll show it in a minute. But it means the instructor visibility was not higher here than here. So we can compare visibility. So it's not due to the visibility. Okay, results. What happened? Essentially, we split this to 2 questions. First, did more learners use the forums? Do we draw more students to the forums? And second, do learners participate differently? Once they're in the forums, do they do different things in the forum? Do we improve the nature of the interaction with each other? So let's start with the first question. Did more learners use the forum? Typically, the answer is, I'm not sure. So this is percentage of active learners. So these are students who logged in the course once. Okay, it's a very low threshold. It's not students who cited and did nothing. These had to log in at least once. And we see an increase and then drop. And this mirrors very well the instructor posts. So maybe the instructor came, the students came, instructor left, students left. But when we look further at what happens on topic, this is a much nicer image. These are all the threads that are topical threads. And we coded them, we did good like iterative reliability, the whole 9 yards. We were blind to what the numbers are, what threads are. And we see an increase of almost 50%, or let's say about 40% from here to here on students being active on topical forums, on topical threads. And this stayed, right? The instructor didn't do much here. And still students were much more engaged on topical threads. So this is nice. That's not fair. Increase of 40%. Same shows for reading. How many students read the topical threads? And this is again, nice increase from 17% to 20% of students who read. 20% of students who ever logged in read, and by read we mean they actually clicked on the threads to see them, more than just look at the titles. So that's actually a nice piece of data. The other nice thing, this is by week. What percentage of the students by week were active on the forums? And we can see, again, green and pink is the after transformation. We see that throughout the course, they're higher. Week 8 is only final exam. So the improvement was not just the beginning or just the end. It's pretty much throughout. Here, the reading goes down here, but pretty much throughout the course. Do they participate differently? The second question. This compares the first and second MOOCs offering, not the third one, because the number of students is different. And essentially, a line means 2 students talk to each other. And note, the dot is the student. And the colored notes are the instructor and the TAs. This, after transformation, we see students talking to each other much more. Now, many more lines, many fewer isolated points, and the lines are thicker. We have much more interaction between students in the after transformation. These are the number of posts students do. The top general posts, some increase, not much. These are topical posts. So this is once a student participates. Okay, let's look only at the students who participate. What the average number of posts? And they doubled the number of posts from 1.5 to 3. So we have more students, about 1.5 times students, and each student that participates doubled their participation. Okay, and again, roughly throughout the course. Okay, next question. Did it improve learning? That's where we close the cycle, bring to new questions. Okay, we see students do much more. Does it improve learning? And that will be the shameless plug to Learning at Scale 2017. If you review for this, please accept the paper. And if it's accepted, then I hope you'll hear about it there. Which leads me to the next shameless plug. The Journal of Artificial Intelligence in Education is doing a special issue on Learning at Scale. Details are here. bit.ly, IJIN, Learning at Scale. So just Google, so would be glad to read what you do there in that special issue, which I edit. So let's bring it all together. What did we do in the course design? We seeded topical threads, we facilitated elaboration, ask, not answer, and we invited diversity. What did we get? We got more students active on these topical threads. The active students did more, and it was better integrated in the learning experience. I did not show that. We have much more frequent visits to the forum, so students came, again, integrated into the learning experience. They just visited the forum much more frequently and higher percentage of the active days. And if you want us to kind of think with you about forums in classes you work on, and we'll be more than happy to. And that's it. Thank you.
We have 4 minutes for questions.
So, how well do you think it bodes for edX forums if after all this work you still only get 6% of active learners? I mean, you did a very nice thing with having cool questions in the content units and everything. It's not hidden away, and still it's hard.
The edX forum is a really bad platform.
That's why I was there.
Sorry?
That's why I wanted to ask what you thought about that.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of slides about that, and the edX people know it. The edX forums go only 3 levels deep, so there's like the thread of the question, and then answers and responses. You cannot thread discussions. You cannot reply to an earlier person. It's not easy to search forums, and there are many things. An instructor gets no analytics, nothing. The pinning is random. Never mind. That will take 20 more minutes.
Do you think that
Just to say, sorry, this 6% is not bad. Again, the students who logged in at least once. I have the data for students who actually were more active learners. Percentage is slightly higher there.
Do you think that technical, design, interface design discussion impact their views? Like, it would have been if they were done nicely. What would be the number? What do you think?
I can't guess number. I don't know the numbers. Right, there are nicer tools such as Piazza. So I don't know what would happen there, but they will not be as nicely integrated, right? Why can't you just discuss a component near the component? I'm sure it will have a huge impact. The other thing is, again, data back to students and data back to instructors from the forums. Right now it's dead end. Ryan did some nice work on students who game systems, and he found that the interface elements determine behavior even more than who the student is. And I suspect that's the case here. The interface elements matters a lot.
I have a quick question. So in one of the graphs you showed, instructor activity, where you showed the first time is this amount, and second time it doubled. So I wanted to ask, have you done any content analysis on is that just because she or he posted similar content twice, or?
Yeah, we did so what we did, I think, this is a slide that shows both together what the instructor did overall and what the instructor did on topic. She just did much more of everything. We see she increased her on topic posts too. And we tried to analyze the on topic. It was difficult, but they were all on topic.
Yeah, because it's very interesting because I would want to know that whether he posted more often because of the pressure that's given to this person, or is that because he...
No, it's a she. I think what happened is that the TAs went way down. TA went from 140 to 18, and partially was TA hours were shrunk. So then the instructor was concerned, oh, no one is talking on the forums, I better fill in the gap. But there was no pressure, it was very offhand, we didn't talk with her. I don't think she felt pressure from us because of the study. I don't think she was really aware of what's going on. Because all the manipulation I showed you went into the design of the course. So about a month before the course launched, she created these threads and forgot about it. So I don't think it was pressure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody, my name is Claudia Hau, and the work I present here was mainly done by my PhD students, Guang Yang and Dan, who could not be here. And we're from a research group that's in the computer science department, so we are very interested in the data side of MOOCs. And TU Delft is a very large provider of MOOCs on edX. We have more than 40 MOOCs running, so we have a lot of data, and we got the lucky task to actually look into this and see how we can improve learning based on that. And so one of the things we looked at that I present here is to actually figure out who's taking our MOOCs, what are these people doing, why are they doing this, and in general, can we learn something about the effectiveness of the MOOCs? So just because you take a MOOC and you pass, does it do anything to you? Does it help you? Do you actually learn? I mean, I can pass many of our MOOCs, because I already have a PhD, but I probably did not learn much, right? So we also want to look into these kind of things. And the approach we take here is to go beyond the MOOC platform itself. So what we always have available to us is whatever activities the learner is doing during the MOOC on the MOOC platform. That's all we know. We know nothing else. But of course, we would like to know what the learner is doing before he comes to us. And of course, we would also like to know what he's doing afterwards. How does the MOOC impact her future life? And one way to go about this is to actually not just ask the person like 6 months later, oh, can you please tell me something about how the MOOC impacted your life? Because we know the return rate is abysmal. Instead, we try to find these people on the web. So the question we ask here is, can we gain a deeper understanding about our learners by looking them up on the social web? And of course, then the first question is, well, where would we actually find them? How many could we find them? So the questions here that we specifically posed were, well, on what platforms can we go about looking for them? Are there particular types of people that take certain types of MOOCs? So once we found them on the platforms, can we actually also analyze what they do there and what kind of people they are? And of course, most importantly for our colleagues that actually create MOOCs is, well, what do we learn that will impact the MOOCs in the future? And these are the three questions we considered. So how did we go about doing that? Taking our learners and connecting them with their personas on Twitter, on GitHub, and other platforms. And here, the beauty of edX is that as an edX provider, we actually know who our learners are. So we do get access to their email and their full name. And so we took the email address and we just looked up, well, where are people registered with the same email address on different platforms? And here, the main culprit is GitHub, which actually provides you a lookup service to find people by their email address. So we found a certain number of people that are on GitHub that have their profile image and maybe also links to their Twitter account and so on. So we used this to then also do direct matching. So we try to find these people based on these links. And finally, we also had something that's called fuzzy matching, where we just look for the full name of the person and their profile image. And if we find this on Twitter and on GitHub to be the same, we assume, well, that's very likely the same person. So we use that. And so this is fully automated approach, which we could do for any number of MOOCs that we have at TU Delft. And we did this for 18 in total, so we did quite a number. And then the next question, of course, now that we know how to do it, on which platforms do we actually try to find people? And here it's very important to know that the TU Delft is a technical university. So we provide a lot of MOOCs in computer science, in solar technology, in wastewater engineering. So we are really focusing on engineering. And many of these are on the internet, right? So you're more likely to find engineering students than, for instance, social scientists on GitHub. It's just the nature of things. So we looked at these 5 platforms. Gravatar is a platform which is known by the more technical-minded people. Again, here you can do direct matching with email. Twitter, I think everybody knows. LinkedIn also is familiar, especially to the US people. StackExchange is this big question answering site where many people have it. And GitHub is a social coding platform. But if you write code, you want to share it with colleagues, you usually do this through GitHub because it offers nice tools to collaborate. So these were the platforms we selected, mainly because we thought that we will find many people there. And here's what we found. So what we did is we took 18 Delft MOOCs, mainly engineering topics, and we just tried to find the learners in these MOOCs on these different platforms. And here you can see that, for instance, for GitHub, in one MOOC that was the worst in that respect, we only found 3% of learners on GitHub. But there was also a functional programming MOOC where we nearly found half of all the people that we have in our MOOC on GitHub. So now we don't just have only traces of what the learners do on GitHub, on edX, but we can also look, how did this person program before the course started? How did this person program after the course ended? A year, 2 years, 3 years later. Did the course actually have any impact? Right, a similar question we can ask for LinkedIn, for instance. Do their careers change afterwards? Did they actually need to take this course if we look at what their career is right now? And as you can see here, on average, we had about 5% of learners across all the courses can be found, which is not that much, but it's better than nothing. You still learn something about your learners. So then what can you do? Well, on Twitter, we were not very creative so far. We just did the basic things that you can very easily do with machine learning. We just thought, well, once we know who you are on Twitter and we collect everything you tweet publicly, can we predict your age and gender? And yes, that is possible, which is not very surprising, so that was not the most interesting finding. More interesting to us was what people are doing on LinkedIn. And in particular, we wanted to know what type of people actually take our courses. So we have these surveys and we know people are highly educated, but we actually also care about, well, in what are they highly educated? And so here's an example of a MOOC that we found interesting but also disappointing. So we have a MOOC which is called data analysis, but it's not. It's really how to use Excel. So it's a super basic data analysis MOOC on how to use spreadsheets to do averages, standard deviations, plotting. And we thought, well, the people who take this MOOC are maybe business-oriented people that might lack this knowledge. But what we found was that the people that took the MOOC were mostly software engineers. And software engineers all have basic Excel skills. So the people actually that took the MOOC and passed the MOOC were those people that already possessed the knowledge. They just did it for the certificate. And then the question is, okay, is it worth giving a MOOC where you know the majority of people don't learn, they just go there to get a virtual piece of paper. Now, more in line with what we anticipated, here's a different example of another MOOC, which is called the Delft Design Approach, where you learn in general how to design stuff. So it's very broad, and as you can see here, the people that took it are co-founders, UX designers, also software engineers, but a broad range of people, much more in line with what we had expected. So the first one was a negative example of where we think MOOC should move away from. So we just gave people a piece of paper, basically. So here's another cool thing you can do. Well, you can throw a lot of data analysis at your problems. This is what we did here as well. We just looked, if we look at kind of the professional interests of our learners on LinkedIn, can we cluster them into different groups? And, well, if you look at people who take data analysis versus solar energy, you say, well, it's pretty much the same type of people. But if you look at people who take functional programming versus people who do framing, which is political science, you do see some differences. So apparently, functional programs are special. They're different from the rest. Another interesting aspect we looked at was StackExchange. And here we focus on one particular course, again, to see what impact does our MOOC have. So this is a MOOC about functional programming, which took place at this point in time. And we wanted to know, well, do people that have taken the MOOC, do they answer more questions or less questions on Stack Overflow in this case? So this is 3 different graphs. On the top we see what do the MOOC learners do on the Haskell aspect. So Haskell is a language that was taught in that MOOC. And as we can see there, after the MOOC, the number of questions our learners have went down dramatically. So clearly the MOOC did something. Either people ran away from Haskell or they had fewer questions about it. Right? Here you can also see in the second graph that the same happened for, in general, functional languages, not just Haskell, the one language that was taught, but in general you can see that the trend is downwards. And just as a sanity check, we see that on average, across all the people that are on StackExchange, not our learners, this is not the case. So clearly, this course did have an impact on learners. Now, you can ask a similar question by looking at the code contributions, not just the kind of questions and answers they give on StackExchange, but also on how they actually code before and after the MOOC. And here, so this is the same learners now on GitHub, and what we did is we looked at 1.5 years before the code and up to nearly a year afterwards. And we just looked at their code contributions. And that's possible on GitHub, so you can get access to all the public code contributions, and you can just look how many of those are actually in the language that the people learned about. And as you can see here, before the course, well, there were some, but many people actually never programmed the language before. And then you see it rising after the course ended, but then also you see very quickly within 2-3 months, it's declining again, which is not surprising if you know Haskell, but at least the people tried. So clearly we see here that the course had some impact on our learners, so this was definitely a positive outcome. So what are the take-home messages that I want to give you here? We do find learners. For some type of courses we find a lot of learners because the people are very tactically minded, but on average it's 5%, and that's a wide range of bachelor level courses. We also only looked at 5 globally popular platforms. If you look at platforms that are more specific or more local, you will have a lower percentage. Now we also saw that we can identify specific traits in our learners just based on their social web interactions. We actually don't have to look at them. And we also saw that for some MOOCs, we actually see an impact. So based on the traces that people leave reports on the MOOC, you can actually observe, yes, the MOOC has changed something in them. Right now we are drilling down much more on what has actually changed. So if you think about the GitHub example, we only so far counted the lines of code in a particular language. But of course, I can write a lot of Haskell code, which is really bad. So we also want to see, well, what concepts that they learned in the MOOC did they actually apply? And that requires a much deeper analysis of the source code where you need much more time to do properly. And then we go beyond just saying, oh, they use it. Then we can actually say, well, we know that 20% of the learners, they applied this concept from the MOOC. And maybe 0% of the learners applied another concept from the MOOC. And in this way, what we gain is insight for ourselves and the lecturers, what is actually successful? What do people apply? What have they learned? And what can they use in practice? And this, we hope, will actually benefit our MOOCs much more. So then we can develop our MOOCs in a way that we know, okay, these kind of concepts are really important for people, and these are less so. And with that, I'm at the end of my talk. So thank you very much for your time. If you want to look at what else we're doing in terms of data-oriented MOOC processing, we have a website, Lambda Lab, where you find all our papers. Thank you very much.
We have 6 minutes for questions.
I have a question. Very interesting talk. Appreciate it. My question may appear confrontational. It's not. I don't know exactly how to ask it properly. Are there any ethical concerns that came to your mind before you worked on that research?
Well, we actually do have an ethics review board, like most universities, I guess, and we did talk to them. And the stance, which I think is more lenient in Europe than in the US, is that as long as we do to help our learners, we're okay.
And we only look for public data. So we actually don't go and crawl your Facebook data, for instance. We can't, right? So we only look for public accessible data. And in Europe, at least, and I know it's different in the US, but in Europe, that counts as ethical.
Okay, so the answer is yes.
I would have a different question. You said that you want to use this to see which concepts from the courses were applied or not applied, but you only find the percentage of the course participants. So are you not concerned that maybe the other 95% might have found that concept really useful?
Yeah, so actually in this case where we do it right now, functional programming, we have 40% of all the learners, right? But of course I see your point that there might always be a bias because we don't capture everybody. But our stance at this point in time is that it's better to capture at least some than nobody, right? But yeah, we are very much, we need to be careful not to overgeneralize from a smaller percentage of people. You're right.
Well, it gives you additional data over questionnaires, which is valuable.
Yes, because our questionnaires have a very low rate, and they're always biased by the passers, unfortunately.
So I love this work, and one of the things I would love to see more of it. You know, you and I have talked a little bit about some collaborations, but how do you think we could move as a field towards paying more attention to these kind of longer-term life changes?
But I think one important aspect here is that we actually have to not only learn these things, but also learn the lessons from these things. So it's, as a computer scientist, this is like a lot of technicality, but you get it to work and you get nice insights. But then usually we write them in a paper and, okay, great, work, done, right? So unless we actually take this and we actually do something with it and we actually change the way we teach, I think all of this will not move us forward, because then we do the same analysis in 5 years' time with the same type of MOOCs. So to make this work, we actually have to do this step and apply also what you said, Franz, with your forum. We have to actually apply this in the next MOOCs and revise and reiterate all the time. So I think to me this is lacking a little bit right now. At least also in Delft, we have a set principle of how to make a MOOC, and that kind of works. And it's hard to change it right now. We have like little steps, but we don't make radical changes.
I like that answer, and I agree with that. I'm sorry if I'm taking too much more. I feel like though, like there's a groundbreakingness to what you're doing that that we really need to replicate, because you know it used to be the era where like longitudinal studies were like ridiculously expensive, right? And you know like the Harvard longitudinal study was like so much funding over so many years, and now we can do like longitudinal, like it seems like it might become easy. So this is really exciting. So.
Yeah, I think it's very easy, especially if you do computer science MOOCs, because these people are everywhere. I'm one of them, so it's okay. But if you do anything with like social science, or it's so much harder to find these people. I can't find them. They're not on like the normal platform. They might be somewhere, but we cannot really track them. So I think for engineering, computer science, we can do a great job in the future. For like art, design, anything that's not like that, it will be very hard to also do that, because they don't want to be found. My opinion.
So follow-up question, right? I mean, you could, the ethical thing, and like you could find them with credit scores, right? Like that's what you'd really care about, is doing this kind of thing, improve people's credit scores over time, which is being used in all sorts of horrible ways. But you could think of ways that you could actually get at this, but not at the platforms that you're looking at.
What's a credit score? I guess it's an American
Using
thing.
your credit card.
Your financial.
Okay, maybe for Americans that's possible. I don't think we. Excuse me,
Europeans draw the line.
I don't even think I have a credit score.
Oh yeah.
You have.
No, there's no history.
No, there is. I think if you have bad credit score,
You know it.
you know it.
Okay, but
It's not public information.
Yeah, so
like
maybe that's more a Western world solution, right? Because if you are somewhere in Eastern Asia or in Africa, you might not have any credit score. Even for Europeans, I think it's a not really known concept.
So, fantastic. What I'm missing is a little bit of more qualitative data for insights about the why. because you made assumptions that sometimes we're aware of them, sometimes not even. For example, you said, oh, they just came for the certificate, right? So you assigned motivation to your data. Maybe different motivation. Maybe they thought the course would be advanced and realized it was not advanced. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah,
So did you try to reach out to people like 6 months into the future and ask them, hey, how did the course affected your last 6 months of your life?
Yeah, so we actually tend to do this quite a lot, but the return rate is very low. So when we do, from the people that get the return, they do actually openly say, yep, we do it for a certificate. So the correlation between what the data tells us and what the questioning tells is very high. It's not perfect. So actually also in the Haskell example, we asked people, did you ever use Haskell before the course? And we knew, we looked at your GitHub account, you did use it, and they said no. Sometimes maybe it was 2 years ago, they don't remember. So in this case, the data is actually more truthful than the person. But we always try to follow up and correlate questionnaire results with data results. Yeah.
So maybe kind of like a suggestion, have you ever thought of like using open badges or digital badges to insert that on different like platforms, or when people have that badge, that they can kind of track down?
I know there are people looking into this. We have not. This was really a post MOOC analysis where we know what we do.
So like the others, I really like the work you're doing. It's just taking another dimension, another perspective. I mean, I guess another approach is to see people as lifelong learners, so they're not just doing one MOOC course, but they're doing a series of MOOC courses, and rather like health studies, where they go back to the doctor every year or twice a year, see what happens when they come back onto the platform again and what's happened in between. Is that the sort of thing that you're looking at as well?
I think your platform is great because you offer a wide variety of courses. Delft is really, a series on water, wastewater.
Yeah.
And then if that's your interest, you go away. Or if you say you want to get a broad education like you do in Future Learn, we can't offer that, right? We only have 40 MOOCs. But yeah, ideally, and we've only been doing this for 3 years. But yeah, maybe if you do this for another 10 years, then we can actually look that far in the future. Would be great. But I think actually your platform is better suited because you offer more of a range, of course. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Apologies, my technology was not cooperating with me. Good afternoon, my name is Paige Cunningham, and I'm a doctoral research assistant with the University of Illinois' Center for Innovation in Teaching and Learning's Data Analytics Group. Today I'll be talking about some of the challenges for developing holistic views of MOOC participants when dealing with massive data with individual learners. And you can progress. I will first provide an overview of the University of Illinois' experience with teaching courses on Coursera. I will next address some of the challenges that result from trying to make sense out of the vast quantities of data and types of data that result from teaching in Coursera. And I will finish by considering some of the implications that these data challenges have for the University of Illinois going forward. Between August 2012 and February 2016, the University of Illinois offered 24 unique graded courses on the original session-based platform. Our first course on the new on-demand platform began in April of 2015, and as of late August of 2016, we had offered 57 unique on-demand courses, 15 of which were previously session-based courses that have transitioned to on-demand. To date, there have been 11 on-demand specializations, 2 of which were originally offered on the session-based platform. Enrollment counts are based on unique enrollments in unique courses. To date, there have been about 1.4 million session-based enrollments and approximately 500,000 on-demand enrollments. Approximately 50% of session-based enrollees and 58% of on-demand enrollees become active participants, which for us means they have watched at least one lecture, participated in at least one forum, or taken at least one quiz. Approximately 6.5% of active session-based participants and 8.9% of active on-demand participants have qualified for a course completion certificate. Free certificates were available in all session-based courses, with a paid verified certificate option added in early 2014, but most on-demand classes now use the premium grading option, in which only participants who have paid for the certificate are able to see the graded assessment materials that are required for course completion. While massive amounts of course-related data are produced, we must recognize that not all data is equally meaningful or useful. For example, learner grade data is relatively easy to extract, but provides a superficial understanding of learner engagement, as I'm sure you're aware. More meaningful glimpses into such engagement can be acquired from in-depth lecture watching and clickstream data when it is available, as well as from survey and forum data, though forum data is typically messy and hard to analyze in a timely fashion. In addition, the transition between analyzing our session-based and on-demand data has been particularly rocky. Both the session-based and on-demand modes ran simultaneously for nearly a year, emphasizing the difficulties caused by the shift. We typically received session-based data just a month after each session-based course closed. In contrast, we only got access to the on-demand data in late 2015, more than 6 months after our first on-demand courses started, meaning we essentially ignored our on-demand courses for that period. Once we began receiving on-demand data, we learned that some data sources are still not available for on-demand courses, and other data is presented in very different ways. As a result, the changes to learner data have made accurate comparisons between delivery modes challenging. In session-based courses, all learners could see and submit assignments and take summative quizzes, providing us with all of the learner grades. In on-demand courses, initially all learners could still submit assessments, but now in most courses, only paid learners have access to assignments and summative quizzes. This shift represents a significant loss of data about participation, which is problematic for researchers. Additionally, there have been numerous complaints from longtime free participants who are unhappy about the loss of access to materials to which they were accustomed. On the session-based platform, lecture data was recorded and reported about both learners who streamed videos and learners who downloaded them, though not about learners who watched lectures using the mobile interface. We could see interaction events with browser-based streaming videos, including pauses, errors, playback speed, repeats, etc. We could also see who downloaded which videos, though we could not see exactly how they were interacting with the videos. Having access to data on both access formats allowed us to see who streamed, who downloaded, and who did both, and compare that with their course performance. In contrast, the on-demand data only includes streaming videos, not downloads or mobile views. And the recorded data is considerably more limited, only reporting when a learner starts a video, whether it was completed, and how many times they interacted with it. Thus, we have no way to identify patterns of interactions with video. Additionally, learners may be able to watch at least some videos without logging in, the views which cannot then be tied back to them. Both of these changes contribute to a big gap in data, resulting in many missing learners. Further on-demand streaming video interaction granularity and video download data have both been requested, but are currently not a priority for Coursera's developers. On both the session-based and on-demand platforms, forums are open to all logged-in participants, both paid and unpaid, which means that we receive data on all of them. However, forum data is very messy, not quick to analyze, and tables may be incomplete or error-filled. For session-based courses, we have identified how many threads participants have started and participated in, and calculated how many typed characters they contributed in order to see who was most active and in what ways. As a note, data from our first 12 courses showed that only about half of people who earned certificates were active in forums. Our group is not currently analyzing on-demand data, though we're interested in doing so in the future if campus researchers are interested. An analysis of the content of threads and forum network analysis both offer the potential for deeper understanding of learners, which we've already seen, but they are beyond the scope and current skills of our data team, so we would need additional researchers to help make sense of this data. We are currently working with student researchers to explore forum participation in session-based courses, including who originated posts, who responded, etc. Between the clickstream data and the activity log, both of which record various but not identical sets of course activities, we could see which course pages were clicked on, in what order, etc. in session-based courses. From the clickstream data, we could see frequently used IP addresses, browsers used, screen size and resolution, and the order in which learners interacted with videos. While the clickstream data included information on streaming videos, download data was only available from SQL tables, such as the activity log. Curiously, clickstream data occasionally recorded users who did not otherwise appear in other tables, which should not have been the case, a situation which we reported to Coursera for correction. While we found the clickstream and activity log data vital for our analyses of session-based courses, there is currently no clickstream or activity log data available for on-demand courses. Clickstream data is supposed to be coming, but we do not yet know what it will look like, what will be selected for logging, or whether backdated data will be available, and we have no control over this. Geographic location of learners is typically determined by IP address. For session-based courses, our research group calculated learners' most frequent IP address using the clickstream data, a process which is currently not an option for on-demand courses, so we're using Coursera's reported locations for now. For the session-based courses, our research group collected demographic and satisfaction data by sending surveys directly to all the students at the beginning and end of each course, but response rates have been expectedly low. It has become even more challenging to distribute the surveys correctly on the on-demand platform, as we must rely on internal Coursera triggers for automatic survey distribution at the beginning, after hitting the completion milestone, and after 3 weeks of non-completion, non-activity. In the initial survey, we ask about demographics, why they are taking the course, what they expect to get out of it, etc. For the non-active and end of course or completer surveys, we also ask about why they're not active or how their experience went. Did the course meet their needs? Did they get what they expected? Were they satisfied? Did they have any technical troubles, etc.? This data is useful because it can show us where our learners are coming from and other demographic distributions for particular courses and specializations, which can help instructors find ways to tailor materials. We can also learn what issues learners are having through open-ended questions about what they liked or disliked about a course, why they stopped participating, etc., which is of use to instructional designers. Our session-based course completion certificates were originally all free, but in 2014 we added the paid signature track for verified certificates. With free enrollment, participants could test their own knowledge and earn completion certificates without having to pay for anything, and many did even if the certificates were not of practical use to them. Many of our on-demand courses are now running on the premium grading option, which, as previously stated, enforces an auditor paid learner split. In these courses, learners can only access the required assessment materials if they pay for a certificate, which impacts participation rates. Surveys tell us that premium grading may be a turnoff for many participants who would still like to test their own knowledge through the quizzes and assessments, but don't necessarily want to pay for a certificate as it's of no use to them. Session-based courses had a finite end date by which participants had to earn sufficient scores on graded assessments to earn a certificate. For on-demand paid participants, but not paid dropouts or auditors, there is still a clear marker, meeting completion requirements by finishing enough units with adequate grades, which triggers a completed status in the course database, and they are sent the completer survey. We try to find both dropouts and completed auditors through a survey of non-active participants, who are determined by Coursera to have been inactive in a course for 3 weeks. The non-active survey identifies auditors who have finished the course by consuming everything available to them, but cannot meet unavailable paid completer milestones. Many auditors have indicated that they would like an official way to mark completion of what they're permitted to do, which is watch videos and comment in the forums, so as to be registered as done in a course. Additionally, the non-active survey catches paid participants who have ceased participating for various reasons. Some for lack of time or interest, others for having gotten what they wanted out of a course and thus have left the course, but have not officially completed the course. Knowing why learners are no longer active in a course helps us to identify phantom course members who are unable to officially mark themselves as completers but have met their own completion goals, as well as course members who have left due to dissatisfaction with particular courses. Knowing what learners do and don't do, who they are, why they may have stopped participating, etc., can help make sure that they get the best possible education and experience on the platform. Unfortunately, it can be difficult to make these kinds of judgments based solely on the data available through the platform. Surveys are being used to help flesh out the available data, but are still limited in what they have been able to establish thus far. We are spending significant time and effort on developing MOOC courses and are even creating University of Illinois degree programs based around Coursera. Yet often the people who handle the data are not the people who can make the assessments about the outcomes, and so we need to work toward working in tandem between the two groups. The University of Illinois pioneered for-credit graduate programs on the Coursera platform, experimenting with this new form of online education through the creation of two very different programs. The IMBA program officially enrolled its inaugural cohort in January of 2016. It is based around a sequence of 6 specializations, 4 core and 2 elective, each comprised of 6 to 7 4 to 5 week courses, and each specialization ending with a capstone. IMBA students participate in open Coursera sessions that include other non-IMBA students as well, with additional work comprising the degree-bearing element. A second program, the MCSDS, launched in August of 2016 as a 32-hour master's degree. Compared with the IMBA's 72 credit hours, it appears to have far fewer requirements, but little information is available about this program to determine how it will develop. Thus far, it is comprised of 3 16-week closed courses available only to MCSDS students. So it is essentially using Coursera as a new form of learning management system rather than a typical MOOC. Conducting appropriate data analysis on these new degree programs is important to ensure that the University of Illinois, the programs themselves, and the students enrolled in the programs are well served. As MOOCs are partnerships between institutions and providers, they have additional stakeholders beyond traditional campus-based courses, each with their own concerns and data needs. Learners' use of data is based on consuming what is provided to them as they choose how to participate and interact with the course offerings. However, they are the source of most of the data being analyzed by the other stakeholders. Instructors have the opportunity to explore differences between their on-campus or traditional online students' outcomes and those of their MOOC students. They currently primarily use Coursera's dashboards for immediate results on their courses, but for comparison between different courses and to see long-term trends, they are likely to need our data. In the case of the University of Illinois, the new form of instructional format represented by the MOOC-based degree programs will lead to new opportunities for research on program-level differences in pedagogical design and delivery when compared to more traditional on-campus or online programs. These opportunities also require a wide range of data sources. Coursera is in a position to work both collaboratively with its partner institutions on the partners' enrollees or separately to conduct research on the entire platform's enrollees. They have full control over the data they collect and the surveys they distribute, though do take input from their partners. All stakeholders need to work together to help the right data get to the right people in order to ensure individual learners get the best possible experience from the courses offered on the platform. Questions?
4 minutes for questions specific to this talk, and then we'll open up the floor for general discussion. So I'm a bit taken aback, you know?
Okay.
I'm really surprised that there are all these changes to the design changes I kind of buy, because that's just the changes to design. But the changes to how the logs work, you know, what are kind of y'all's long-term plans for being able to make use of that data? Because this is an issue that we're going to be facing as well.
We're still grappling with that. We knew there were going to be changes because they were previously on a SQL database that they exported when they requested it, and they've moved over to Amazon, what is it, Redshift? Whatever the Amazon, one of the Amazon web servers. And so the data, we used to get approximately 30-some tables per class. We're now getting 72. But it doesn't include a lot of the data that we actually want. So they're giving us much more granular, so we get like a single table with 2 values in it that tells you what something represents. But it doesn't actually tell us what necessarily the people are doing in the class. And so we're doing the best we can to merge it, but we're acknowledging at this point that a lot of it we just cannot do direct comparisons without significantly more data being released to us from Coursera. Basically, to an extent, we're bashing our heads against a wall and trying to figure out how we can best go about merging all of these things together. Coursera is actually just still the session-based platform is still live, although they're in the process of closing it down. So no new classes are being offered on it. And compare it, it's basically just, to a significant extent, kind of impossible to do direct comparisons in many cases at this point. And so we're finding which elements that we can match across. We can certainly see who's active in forums. That kind of data is still available. We can see the grades, how grade distributions work for the people in particular classes, at least for the ones where they actually have grades available, but we're just losing a lot of data.
So I'm trying to add on to your point. So the entire relational database structure is totally different now too. Yeah, so it's kind of like one thing you would expect we can compare some things, but we can't.
If you go to the link that I have here, this is for our website, and there's a link on it that goes to documentation, which is actually the wiki that I created for documentation of basically the different kinds of tables Coursera is doing. And in the process of Coursera exporting all of these, the session-based tables, because they're doing bulk downloads for everybody on the existing stuff, they're actually pointing them at my wiki as the best documentation of Coursera's session-based courses. And you can, if you look at that, you can see the differences. I have links for both the session-based and the on-demand, and you can compare the two to see what kinds of available data is there. I have tables that explain some of the differences, but I'm not sure they're currently available publicly. So, but the answer is just, it's a mess.
So maybe an outsider, don't do this kind of research, are you moving off of Coursera? Is that something
No,
you're going
we're getting more.
Get a platform that gives you the right data that you need? Is instead of, I mean, a lot of what you're saying is it's not working for you anymore. What are you going to do?
Well, as you can see from this, we're getting more and more stuck into Coursera, frankly, with these new programs. It seems to be working well for the people sort of on the instructional design end of it, and for the instructors, it's not working so well for the back-end data analysis part of the thing, because they keep adding more and more functionality to their dashboards. So for the instructors, they keep seeing more and more data, but that's very granular on particular courses, and it's very difficult to pull back and look at sort of the broader institutional level data that is available through the data exports, as opposed to what you can see if you're just looking on a day-to-day basis on the dashboard. So, the University of Illinois is currently charging full steam ahead on Coursera. So.
So I think this is a good time to open the floor to general discussion of these three great talks. I think we have 15 minutes remaining of our session, and folks feel free to open the floor to questions to any of these folks or general observations that you've been inspired to have from these set of talks.
Okay. Thank you, all the speakers. So first confession, I'm very new to MOOC and I'm in the middle of designing it, so I'm facing a reality that participants in future are going to experience. I attended a wonderful session before this by Mike and Danielle. It was around problem-based learning and future learning, around social constructivist learning. I'm building on it, yeah, and I'm new to this. So a lot of what you presented was, I'm in awe of it, and I don't understand it. Here's what I'm asking myself. When we look at designing an online course, it by design is artificial. Everybody knows going into it that it is artificial. And yet we are trying to create simulacra, reality, a sense of true learning. So what do we keep as an ideal benchmark when we are designing a course, irrespective of whether it's in computer science or social science? What can be a good example in front of me to aspire to?
Can I ask you another question? What are you trying to do? What are your goals?
My goal at this time is to figure out what is the goal when a faculty or a university says, we're designing an online course and we want this to be exemplary, or they come up with saying, let's do a meta course on organizational culture.
One of the things that we did as a sideline in our project is that we looked at various different goals that institutions could have in organizing a MOOC. And I think maybe our goal was fairly similar because we were not trying to attract future students with our MOOC. And we were trying to advertise the university, and that leads to a different design. If you're trying to attract future students, you get a different design. And if your goal is to reach out to the poor people who can't afford education, you also get a different design. So,
well, it's interesting that you asked that. I'm new to the world of academia, and perhaps that's why I have the permission to be stupidest in the room and say that, no, I'm saying it in a humorous way. Educational institutions, when they look at MOOC, it's something that they're giving, they're creating. On the receiving end, as a practitioner, before I came into this world, for me, I always looked at MOOC and thought, did they think about me when they designed this? Did they profile me? And now I'm on the other side of the table and I'm sitting as a designer. So I'm seeing the two ends. I was different in my demands when I was the recipient of the product, and I'm different when I'm designing it.
So to try and answer that question.
Thank you.
Firstly, and not give you the answer you want, which is that there isn't an ideal design for a MOOC course. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. And let me just give you an example of that. At the Open University, we very carefully design all of our courses in terms of the different sorts of instructional elements. And so we know what type of design we have. We also measure learner satisfaction, learner completion rates, and the learner scores, so their exam scores. So we know outcome measures as well. So you can ask questions like, what design leads to what satisfaction? And what we found basically is that if you want to improve learner satisfaction, then you give them lots of videos and lots of interactivity. But if you want to improve learner completion, then you give them lots of collaboration. They don't particularly like it, but they stay with the course. And if you want to improve their exam scores, then the worst sort of courses are the ones with lots of videos and lots of text. So you've got a trade-off immediately between learners who are satisfied, particularly at the beginning, and learners who are successful. So it all depends what you want to do. On MOOC courses, you may want to have lots of satisfied people, but not necessarily people who are learning in a deep way. Or you may want to run courses where you've got people who are learning deeply, who are staying with the course, who are completing the exam scores at the end, but were not necessarily satisfied at the beginning, or you have a large dropout. So there are a lot of trade-offs to be made. And we now know some of those trade-offs, but the answer to your question is there isn't an ideal course, because if there was, we'd be designing it already.
Can I just add to that? Because I've also thought a lot about how we know what the learner, I work as an instructional designer, how you design the course, what the ideal was, that all really depends on the particular faculty member and what their goals are, as well as the institutional goals. And so I always begin with that. Well, who are you trying to reach, and what do you want them to learn, and how do you weigh those trade-offs? Do you want to make a really intellectually rigorous course, or do you want to engage lots and lots of people in a preliminary look at it? All of that matters. But I often wonder, where's the student experience in that? Are we designing them for learners? The tough thing is that the learner base is so diverse. How do you generalize about what learners want when you're talking about learners from 190 countries, when you're talking about beginner learners and experts, when you're talking about people who are just vaguely curious versus people who have a strong passion and a commitment? I think these are all really difficult questions, and I have no answers there. But join us in exploring them. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I'm leaving the seminar more troubled than when I entered.
Good. Troubling is important. It's an important part of learning.
Maybe going back to the presentation, I wanted to ask about the social web. You talked, I think what I understood is you got 5% of the students is what you were looking at. Was there any attempt in the courses themselves to get the other 95 to, for example, make use of GitHub and then see how they do in GitHub after they do that fundamentals of programming course, so that you actually use the course as a way to seed some of the social interactions that they might take advantage of once they're done with the course? And because I think one of you two gentlemen said something about the tracking learners over a long period of time would be really interesting, and by doing it with that larger 95, or including the 95%, is that something that was part, or it's being considered?
It's not part of most courses. We do have some courses, for instance, that encourage people to do Twitter conversations, which I'm not a big fan because you can't really have conversations on Twitter. But I mean, for the computer science, we don't have trouble finding them. They are there. They are on GitHub. And if you're a computer science person or you're a programmer, you actually want the world to know what you program, because people that give you a job, they look at your GitHub profile. So these people are public because it helps them. If you are a social scientist, there's no immediate platform unless we build one where people can show off their skills to be visible to employers. So I really think that the problem is that the dedicated platform we have are mostly for technical people, because they enjoy also being on the platform. There are many benefits for them being there. Whereas for other groups of people, for instance managers, they probably don't want to be out there so much, right? They don't want people look at their stuff so much. They want to manage the things.
But I still think it's an idea, because I'm in social sciences, and I saw that we got some demands of the participants who were looking for some sort of follow-up, which we didn't provide. What we could think of, I don't know, making that follow-up a group, a LinkedIn group, or something that is visible that we could track.
We do have, I mean, we sometimes use Facebook groups, or the people that run the MOOCs in Delft, they try Facebook groups, but it's usually not working very well, because it's not really on topic, right? Then somebody has to monitor these groups or moderate them. Mm-hmm. So you actually have to keep being active. Where if you say, oh, here's GitHub, and these are the wonderful things you can do on GitHub, any programmer will jump at it who didn't know it before and say, that's an amazing tool, I will use it. But for something like Google Groups or something, the benefit for the people is less obvious. I think you have to work very hard to make it beneficial for them over the long term. That might be the difficulty.
So I think that's fantastic, and I heard Dan talks about it a lot, learning at scale, and I thought, so I framed this slightly differently. We have this debate whether people learn from MOOCs, and the evidence for learning is mainly